Welcome to the Opposition Media Briefing. Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 24th of June, 2021, and I'm joined by MP Dr. David Lee, the Shadow for the Ministry of Energy, and also MP Saddam Hussein for Barataria Samoa, and he is the Shadow for the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs. We will start the press conference by having MP Dr. Lee speak first, followed by MP Saddam Hussein, and then we will open the floor for questions from the media. So, without further ado, I invite Dr. David Lee to address the briefing. Dr. Lee.
Thank you, Dr. Mehu, and thank you. I acknowledge my colleague, MP Saddam Hussein, who will be coming on after me. I also would like to recognize and thank the media for joining in, and all our viewers and listeners out there virtually. Today, our press conference, and I will start off, and then MP Saddam Hussein will lead in after me on some legal issues. Today, I would like to start off. When I woke up this morning, and I looked at the front page of the Trinidad Express, it saddened me when I read on that front page about NGC, the National Gas Company, which has always been one of our crown jewels as a state organization and a profit-making organization that has assisted the government, whatever administration, in being able to give back to the country and its citizenry by way of their profits. And it saddened me as a shadow MP in energy to be reading on the front page of the Trinidad Express that the NGC, the National Gas Company, has recorded a $2.1 billion loss for the financial year 2020. Now, that in itself is an indictment of the mismanagement of this present government who has been in control of NGC since 2015 to now. Now, NGC has, as I had said, been a crown jewel for the citizenry of this country, and it is the first time in its history that is recording recording a massive loss of $2.1 billion. Under the PP government led by the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, between 2010 to 2015, we have that the NGC organization has always been making billions of dollars in profit for the country and for the well-being of the citizenry of our Twin Island state. And what you have seen now is that in 2019 financial, you saw a drastic reduction in 2019 of profit for NGC, and they recorded a profit after restated profit and loss financial of $482 million. Now, even in 2019, that profit of $482 million is a far cry from the billions of dollars that NGC would have been earning under previously, and especially under the PP government, which had, in our view, sound and fantastic and good management led by the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar. So today we woke up to see a $2.1 billion loss in 2020. And let me just put that into context. Why this loss of $2.1 billion? Is it due to bad negotiations? Now, NGC, I want to say NGC should never be making a loss, because they are the middleman. They are considered the aggregator. So all they do is buy gas from the upstreamers and sell gas to the downstreamers. And they're supposed to be, in theory, always making a profit, because they buy gas cheap and they sell gas to the downstreamers, and in between, that spread in between is their profit. So one has to ask, why is NGC now recording this 2.1 massive billion dollar loss? Is it because of bad management and poor governance and poor policy making at NGC over the last 5 to 6 years? Now, this loss of $2.1 billion didn't happen overnight. It didn't just occur in 2020, it would have had to be a build-up of bad decisions, bad contractual arrangements, bad negotiations by the management and the players of NGC, inclusive of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And one has to ask, if is this loss that we are experiencing and we are reading about today, is it was because of a build-up from that 2017 negotiations that took place in Houston, and we are now reaping not reaping the benefits, but reaping the disaster of those bad negotiations. So one has to ask, where to the chairman, what negotiations or bad contracts took place that has led to this massive loss of 20 in 2020. Now you see what has happened, and I want to put it in context. You're seeing that NGC will not, and we are now coming to the ending of June, and that would make it our a half-yearly report of NGC that has to be released, and it'll be interesting to see what is their financial status in their first 6 months of 2021. And that is why the Minister of Finance is struggling to get revenues to run this country because of their ineptitude, their bad government policies and bad negotiations that the Trinidad and Tobago citizenry are now bearing the brunt of those bad decisions. Now, and that is why yesterday in Parliament you have seen the Minister of Finance try to come and pass, and he passed by a simple majority, eroding the Constitution by a bill that requires a 3/5 and in a simple way to pass the gambling and gaming bill, because in his view they would be gaining maybe $1 to $2 billion in taxes. So he's now saying to the country, I cannot get my revenues from my crown jewels anymore, which is the energy sector, and I'm now going to look for the replacement in the gambling business. And we are saying yesterday, and we can talk more on that, we are saying that is not the reality. He's not going to get the kind of revenues that he expects from the gambling and gaming industry. So that's the issue with NGC. It is a sad day in this country about the loss that NGC is experiencing and the bad decision making of the management of NGC in conjunction with the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, coming out of NGC, which is our crown jewel and has always been a profit-making state organization in the billions of dollars, one of the very few, or maybe the only one, major one that is producing kind of profit over there. I want to get into patriotic and the Point of refinery, and that will then lead MP Saddam Hussein into an issue developing that has developed and developing within that whole Petrotrin compound. Now, what we saw happening with the Petrotrin refinery once again, on Labor Day, we saw a message. I read a message in one of the media papers of a release done by OWT head, where he spoke in his release. He had sent in another bid for the refinery via Patriotic in March of this year, March 2021. And he's yet to get funds from the government or the Prime Minister on that bid that is submitted in March 2021. And that was his statement in his Labor Day message in June, just a week ago. So what happened in Parliament yesterday is that we had asked the Prime Minister, what is the status of the Petrotrin refinery? And the Prime Minister responded by saying, in the coming days, there will be a new request for proposal that will be put out. So new players, and I specifically, can Patriotic OWTU submit another bid. He said anyone is free to submit bids once that new and revised request for proposal for the Petrotrin refinery is put out. So there again, OWTU and Patriotic once again is left out in the cold, because in the cold they've been left out, and we have said that time and time again in the past, leading up to the general election, that this government is about fooling the people, fooling OWTU, giving them the impression that they would have gotten the refinery. They have spent millions of dollars, according to Mr. Roger, in submitting bids, in getting international consultants, and once again, there's nothing has come out of any of their bids that they have put in. And the question we have always said, the opposition leader has always said, and the opposition has always said, that the government is just using the trade union, OWTU, and they use it in the past two elections. They used it firstly in the local government elections in 2019, and you have seen they use it and dangle that carrot of the refinery in front of them, leading up to the general elections of 2020. And once again, they are now left out and unknown what is happening with the millions of dollars they would have spent in submitting their proposals. And coming out of Monday's virtual report that the Honorable Leader, the Honorable Kamala Perswada's predecessor spoke, she raised some issues in that virtual meeting on the refinery and / patriotic, because the Honorable Leader has information that something is happening, and she has raised some issues in the domain. And what the Honorable Leader is seeking is really, unlike all opposition members and the country, so it's not only about the opposition members and the leader, it is about bringing transparency and information to the population of Trinidad and Tobago, which is sadly lacking in everything that this government, their hands are in. So we saw no clarity in the Petrotrin refinery, or the shutdown of Petrotrin. We saw no clarity in that, no transparency. We have asked for that consistently. We now see that NGC is recording a massive $2.1 billion loss. There is no proper accountability. I read a statement from the chairman of the reason for the loss. He called it an extraordinary item. Now, and so there's again lack of proper transparency in our state organizations. And the Honorable Leader had raised some questions on that entire refinery. And she raised a question about a project called Project Calypso, which is directly connected to the refinery. And she has put out in the domain, in the public, to ask this country, the government, through the government, tell us what is Project Calypso. If there's nothing called Project Calypso, there's no issue, there's no letter by Scotia Capital in relationship to a project called Project Calypso and the refinery, tell us so, tell the country, because the opposition leader would have gotten information, just like we all get information. All opposition members get information, and that is our role, that is our responsibility, is to put out in the domain, in the population, in the media, certain issues that are brought to us, and we are asking questions on behalf of the population. So again, that whole entire Petrotrin refinery comes back up again. We will see the RFQ going out in a couple of days, according to the Prime Minister. The opposition will pay very close attention to it. Who are the players have submitted bids in it? We must have a closing time of it, and we must have a proper evaluation team that will evaluate those RFQs, request for proposal, RFP, sorry, and also what is happening with the entire patriotic RFP that they would have to resubmit again, according to the Prime Minister. So again, we are saying that the Petrotrin refinery should have never been shut down. If you wanted to reorganize it, the opposition and the opposition leader have always said that you let us reorganize the refinery, but it has always been a crown jewel, it has always been a foreign exchange earner, which we are starving, we are struggling to earn foreign exchange. Even the Minister of Finance in Parliament has always, now and again, when it suits him, he says Petrotrin has always been a foreign exchange earner. So these are the two questions we put out there in the energy sector, which is in shambles, which is crumbling, because the whole loss of NGC leads into the whole Point Lisas industrial estate and the whole Point Lisas industrial energy companies that are struggling to survive. So if NGC is losing billions, could you imagine what is happening to the downstreamers who depend on NGC for their natural gas? If NGC is losing billions, could you imagine what is happening to those Point Lisa's energy companies? And a lot of them are idle. A lot of them are central employees and workers, especially, and they are now struggling to get it back up and running. And that whole entire energy sector under this government leaves much to be desired and is really in shambles and is not in the way that you would have seen a dynamic energy sector between 2010 to 2015, led by the Honorable Kamala Prasad Misesa. So those are the two issues in respect to energy. I got in, and Saddam Hussein will add a little bit more on the energy sector in respect to a legal issue that is developing. I want to also touch on a matter that is happening in Parliament tomorrow. And tomorrow we have filed a motion of no confidence in the Minister of Health. It was filed as a private members' day. We bring these motions, and it was filed by the member for Caroni East, Dr. Rishi Sicharan, and I just want to read out that motion. And the motion says, a very simple motion, very wide-ranging motion, whereas the Minister of Health has persistently demonstrated his inability to effectively undertake his duties in the health sector for the welfare of our citizens. Be it resolved that this House express a lack of confidence in the Minister of Health and calls for his immediate resignation. Now, this motion is not only, even though it was filed by the member for Caroni East, it is not his motion only, it is not the opposition leader's motion only, it is not the other 18 members of the opposition motion only. It has been brewing for quite some time, where individuals, normal individuals of citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago, would have been calling on the opposition to utilize and their frustration of the Minister of Health and the whole handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that is why it is so timely that tomorrow we had to file this motion of no confidence in the Minister of Health, and we call for his immediate resignation. And I want to also reiterate that we also are calling on a commission of inquiry in the entire handling of the COVID-19 pandemic under this present government. The Minister of Health is responsible by being a line minister, and the entire handling of COVID-19. We have seen yesterday we have reached 768 deaths in this country due to COVID-19. And we have seen so many different issues that are developing on a daily basis in the whole handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, firstly by the Minister of Health and by his government. So, and I'll run through some of those issues, and that is what the motion is so timely. And it's not only restricted, our motion is not only restricted to COVID-19, because COVID-19, while we have seen 768 deaths over the last, especially a drastic increase in the death rate in the last 2 months, a drastic increase. It's about the entire Minister of Health and his effective handling of the ministry since he has taken over since 2015. So that you have a minister who has 6 years plus in one ministry, the Ministry of Health, and it leaves much to be desired. So it is not, our motion is not only about COVID-19. Our motion is about medicines in our hospitals, our health centers issues, and so on. But the bulk of the issue is really how the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that is why we are calling again, as the opposition leader has stated, we are calling as an opposition a commission of inquiry into the whole handling and the debacle of COVID-19. Now, as a doctor friend told me, he said, David, COVID-19, there's no cure. There's no cure to COVID-19, and we are well aware of that. The vaccines that we are getting does not mean that you would not get COVID. You might still contract the virus, which I have known some people who have took the vaccine and have gotten COVID in Trinidad and Tobago. And what it does is minimize your symptoms or the effects of the virus on you. So the vaccine. So what we are saying, you have 768 deaths, and every week you have a press conference of officials coming in front of the media, showing us graphs, showing us nice fancy graphs, and telling us all sorts of different medical terms. But they have yet to come forward, and that is why the opposition leader is calling on a commission of inquiry. They have yet to come forward in the press conference and be truthful and honest to the population and with the population. So there are the 768 deaths. There are so many families have not gotten closure of loved ones they would have lost to COVID-19. Now, there's an article that is interesting that came out yesterday. An article by a family. Her name was Liliwati Singh. She was 70 years old. She passed away due to the COVID virus sometime a couple days ago. Now, the last time she would have seen her family was 38 days ago. 38 days ago. And 38 days ago. So that members of her family, one of her sons passed away from COVID, and her surviving members had also contracted COVID, and they are home isolating. And they are saying that the last time they would have seen their mother was 38 days ago. She has been buried since then, and they weren't even able to attend the funeral. And what is interesting, and that article is no different. What Ms. Singh and that article and her family is no different to any other individual or families who would have passed away in that number of 768, because there are many unknowns of what happens to your family when they go in to a health facility or hospital due for COVID, and you get a call saying that your member of your family have passed away, and then you read in the papers X amount of deaths due to comorbidities. So that we need answers. The country, the families are asking for some answers, some closure, because once you go in, as my doctor friend said, there's no cure to COVID. What you then depend on is an effective health facility that you feel and you hope that you will be taken care of, either via the ventilators, either by getting proper oxygen supplies, etc., and proper care. And we don't know if that is happening. Now, you have so many different tents outside Mount Hope, outside some health centers, as I have been told, we have been told. You have seen horror stories on videos of families going inside those tents, and some of them never come out. And those tents are all COVID positive patients who, from what I understand, I've been told, you go into those tents, there's no facilities, proper facilities, and you lack oxygen. You have seen the videos of lack of oxygen. You have seen the video of families are saying that their family members are not getting proper care and attention, and that is why we are calling a commission of inquiry to find out what is happening in those facilities, not only for the families, but also to put some closure, to get some closure, to give some accountability to the country. So it is not propaganda the opposition is trying. Our role, because we want answers on behalf of our constituents and on behalf of the population that is 1.3 million people. Now there's another issue that is brewing that I read in the papers today about old people homes and the elderly. You're seeing that there's an issue in the elderly homes. There's an article in today's papers, right? Death rise for elderly as COVID-19 hits home. And that is something that MP Rodney Charles had raised in Parliament yesterday. And again, you never could get a proper answer out of the government when we raise questions in Parliament. So we are not raising questions because we are trying to be malicious. We are raising questions because issues are happening within this entire COVID-19 pandemic scenario that is happening in this country, especially in the last 6 months. And then you see the whole issue about the vaccines, the whole issues of the vaccines. And you have Dr. Hines, who is part of the press conference, coming out and yesterday and saying TT, because there was a BBC article about the ranking of where we are. Trinidad, I think, is number 3 as far as running out of vaccines. Dr. Hines runs out there in the press conference yesterday and says TT not running out of COVID-19 vaccines. Now, maybe that's a true statement because you can't run out if you don't have. You cannot run out if you don't have vaccines. Because Dr. Hines, if you listen to his stories over the last 3 or 4 months, it keeps changing. 1 minute there's a spike because when the first lockdown happened in ending of April and everybody rushed to buy food, he said there's a spike because everybody knew that they were going to shut down, the restaurants were going to close, so they rushed to buy food. Then you come back and he said Easter caused a spike. And then when certain government officials say not Easter, he says, okay, well, maybe it was happening before Easter, right? And then now so Dr. Hines, poor soul, I mean, he's trying to defend the indefensible. And we are saying that is why this commission of inquiry is so needed. It is not malicious. It is not an indictment on the medical fraternity. It is because if you throw your mind back in 2020, the early part, when we started to get into this pandemic, the Minister of Health bragged and boasted how the parallel system is par excellence, is the best in the world, and we have things in place. So if you had things in place then, what is happening today? And that is why the opposition leader is calling on inquiry to find out what has fallen down, why we are in this dire straits that is happening, and to bring some closure to the lost ones and their family members. That is what we are saying. So there's another issue again in this entire thing that I read in the papers today, in the Newsday. The CEO of the ERHA, which is the Eastern Regional Health Authority, is saying people who have gotten vaccines are now returning with their vaccination card to be stamped. Now, that's a horrific situation. So what is happening here, based on this article? People who would have gotten vaccination got their card with their name and their particulars on it, but the card was not legally, and I use the word legally, stamped and signed, literally saying that you got a vaccine. Because without that stamp and signature, anyone could make up a vaccination card. Anyone could make up a vaccination card, and that is the danger of this thing. Because why should you leave? Why should anyone be allowed to get vaccinated, get a vaccine card, and now have to come back because the card was not properly stamped and signed? That should never happen in the first place. So there again is another reason, another debacle that is happening continuously, as we had seen with the elderly a couple of weeks ago, literally close to 2 weeks ago, or just beyond 2 weeks or under 2 weeks, where the Minister of Health was saying, come one, come all, come and get your vaccine. And the elderly lined up for hours and early in the morning, and they were turned away. And now we are reading how the elderly is being treated in our homes. So again, the Minister of Health really needs to get his act together. And that is why this whole motion of no confidence is so it is not something that the opposition wants to do, but we have been asked by the people. It is timely that we call out the Minister of Health in this whole debacle and his whole handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think I covered most of the issues that I wanted to cover here today on behalf of the opposition. The only other issue that I think I want to bring out there's an article that the Prime Minister, when he was asked yesterday in Parliament about the Pfizer vaccine by MP for Caroni Central, and then his response, his flippant response, is a total lie, where he says that the opposition leader, why you don't go and ask the opposition leader, I'm just praising, because she got COVID. Now, our opposition leader did not have COVID. And it draws back to me when a few months ago, when I was debating, I had a little sniffle, and like I'm having now. And, they took that, the government, in a whole furor and said that I should do a COVID test, so I should prove, because I said I did test, I did take a COVID test in that debate, I said that, and then they were, I want to see the test and so forth. And I showed my test results in a press conference. And this is the style of the government, that when they're under pressure, they throw flippant remarks on the opposition. And there again, another flippant untruth is being told on the opposition leader, as we saw in Parliament yesterday, about the whole issue when we just simply asked the Prime Minister, was he one of the recipients of the Pfizer vaccine? That was a question asked by the Caroni Central MP. And it's either yes or no. And that's all we wanted. That's what the country wanted to hear, whether yes or no. But we've got a whole tirade and going into all different issues, which is not relevant, and untruths came out. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think I've said my part in this press conference, and I will turn it over to Dr. Meru, who will then pass on to MP Saddam Hussein. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. And now I pass on to MP Saddam Hussein, Shadow for the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs.
Thank you very much for the host. Good afternoon, sir. Today, I'm duty bound as a patriot of our country to bring to your attention matters of public interest and national importance. In a recent arbitration ruling between ANV Oil and Gas Company and Petrotrin, the arbitration panel ruled in favor of ANV Oil and Gas Company. The arbitration stemmed from a dispute relating to an incremental production service contract between ANV Drilling and Petrotrin. The duration of the contract was for a period of 10 years, and based on that contract, AV Drilling would have taken possession of explored and extracted oil from the Catskill field and then deliver the oil to Petrotrin. Now, Petrotrin took a decision to terminate the contract based on two independent consultants, Kroll Consulting of Canada and Gaffney Klein and Associates of the United Kingdom. Then Petrotrin, based on those reports, had formed a view that there was reasonable grounds for suspecting that ANV had misconducted itself or otherwise had been involved in wrongful or fraudulent activity in the delivery of crude to Petrotrin. Where dispute arose in the contract, the matter would be mediated, and if that failed, it will then be referred to arbitration, which was done. Now, prior to the matter being referred to arbitration, you would remember that ANV Drilling filed an emergency application in January 2018 for an injunction to the High Court to prevent Petrotrin from, in fact, terminating the contract. ANV Drilling lost the matter at the High Court. They then appealed to the Court of Appeal and lost. They then tried to appeal the matter to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council even refused permission to ANV Drilling to even appeal the matter to the Privy Council. Now, the matter was then referred to arbitration, and a three-person panel sat in the arbitration. And ANV, as I said earlier on, was the successful party. ANV, in fact, was awarded the sum of $84 million that was held in an escrow account for the period June 2017 to December 2017 for unpaid invoices. They also were awarded US $2.2 million for crude supplied between January and February 2018. And there were two outstanding issues in the arbitration that are yet to be determined. And amongst those issues, it has the issue relating to the quantum, meaning the quantum of damages, the amount of money to which ANV would be entitled to for wrongful termination of the contract. It was widely reported that ANV Drilling will in fact be seeking $1 billion in damages from Petrotrin. That is $1 billion from the taxpayers of our country. Now, shortly after the arbitration, Petrotrin's lead counsel, Ms. Deborah Peake, senior counsel, according to an article in the Trinidad Guardian dated the 18th of June 2021, where parts of the legal opinion was published that was delivered to Petrotrin, indicating that members of the arbitration panel had misconducted themselves in the conduct of the proceedings. As such, Petrotrin should immediately move to have this order of the arbitration set aside and stay any further proceedings of the arbitration. And in that legal advice, Petrotrin was informed and advised that there is a good prospect of success for the court to set aside the arbitration order. Now, according to the Arbitration Act, which regulates the proceedings of an arbitration, when you look at section 19.2 of that act, it states when arbitrator or umpire has misconducted themselves or the proceedings or an arbitration award has been improperly procured, the court may set aside that order. So therefore, the procedure to protect the interests of Petrotrin and the taxpayers from that $1 billion judgment can be utilized by Petrotrin as we speak to set aside these enormous sums of money to be paid to ANV Drilling. Further, Petrotrin in that legal opinion was advised of the time sensitivity of the matter. In the advice given to Petrotrin, they were told, according to the newspaper report, that they should file their application to set aside the order to the High Court forthwith. What that is, by this week commencing 21st June, which is this Monday gone, that means Petrotrin should have already filed the application to set aside the arbitration ruling in the High Court. When the chairman of Petrotrin, Mr. Michael Kwamina, the Prime Minister's attorney at law, was contacted about this, it was reported in the Trinidad Guardian that contrary to the advice given to Petrotrin, the board will meet at the end of this week. Now you have senior counsel telling the board of Petrotrin to file an application to set aside the arbitration ruling this week, but the board will meet at the end of the week. The board of directors of Petrotrin have a fiduciary duty to seek the best interests of the company. They should have immediately summoned and considered the legal opinion of Ms. Peake. They should have already given instructions to the lawyers to file that application in the High Court immediately. I want to remind the board members of Petrotrin that if you are in breach of this fiduciary duty, you can become personally liable for damages that flow from such a breach. Now, this begs the question, the ultimate question is, why is Petrotrin dragging its feet in challenging this award in favor of ANV Drilling? Petrotrin has won the matter in the High Court. They have won in the Court of Appeal and the Privy Council. They were told and advised that they have a good chance of success by challenging the arbitration ruling. They are told that there is sufficient matters that the panel of arbitrators misconducted themselves. Yet they are dragging their feet on this matter. I ask whether it was some other company other than ANV Drilling being awarded hundreds of billions of taxpayers' dollars. Whether the government will have already been at the steps of the Hall of Justice to set aside that ruling. Now there's another issue that arises, is that the chairman of Petrotrin has announced that he has recused himself from any decisions relating to this ANV Drilling matter. Now in law, a person will recuse himself from a decision if he has a conflict of interest. So I ask, what is the nature of the conflict of interest does Mr. Kwamina have with respect to the ANV Drilling matter? When did you decide to recuse yourself from this matter? The leader of the opposition raised these matters in the public interest previously, which we all know about the fake oil scandal. Now I am seeing that members of the government has blamed the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bissessa for this ANV ruling. but I just want to place a few facts on the table. When these matters arose, the Attorney General, who is a legal advisor to the Cabinet, stated that the government will investigate itself, and the opposition leader could take no credit for the investigation into the fake oil scandal. It was the Petrotrin board that would have conducted its own investigation as stated by the Attorney General. 3. Based on those investigations by two international firms, Kroll and Klein, they would have terminated the contract between ANV and Petrotrin. 4. Kamla Persad-Bissessar was not a member of the Petrotrin board to make that decision. 5. If the tables were turned, the Honorable Prime Minister would have vigorously pursued this matter to no end. 6. If the Honorable Prime Minister was in possession of a report relating to a company of a best friend of the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar involved in a similar circumstance, he would have marched up and down the streets from Port of Spain to Faizabad. The board of Petrotrin and the Minister of Energy must account for the sluggishness and reluctance of Petrotrin to immediately move to set aside the award to A&V Drilling after receiving sound legal advice since last week. This is a matter that will affect the future of the country's debt portfolio and that of Petrotrin, its assets, and the related companies. The opposition calls upon the board of Petrotrin and the Minister of Energy to act now and protect the interests of the taxpayers. Now, the second issue I want to address, members of the media, relates to the Commissioner of Police and the Deputy Commissioner of Police selection process. As you are aware, both orders have been laid to revoke the 2015 procedure in both houses of the Parliament. Now, when asked about this, the Attorney General indicated that the new procedure relating to the appointment and selection of a Commissioner of Police is just an issue of simplification, that there will no longer be the requirement for them to go outside of Trinidad and Tobago and advertise for the post of Commissioner of Police. Well, that is an absolute incorrect statement. That statement has no factual grounding. In fact, there is no requirement currently in law for the Police Service Commission to advertise the position of Commissioner of Police outside of Trinidad and Tobago. That was in fact removed by the Attorney General since 2015. So the Attorney General is absolutely wrong with respect to that particular announcement that he made. But on review and careful analysis of the 2015 order and the 2021 order that is now before the Parliament, there are two serious issues that stem from that. First, what they have proposed, or what they have in fact laid in the Parliament, is that they will now remove the requirement for the Police Service Commission to retain an independent firm to assess the applications of the persons for the position of Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police. Now, this raises some concerns. In that, is the Police Service Commission charged, or do they have the expertise, the human resource expertise, to properly analyze these particular candidates and then make the selection? Firms with this particular expertise were in fact retained in the past to ensure that you have the best candidate, the absolute best candidate. Then, is there an inherent bias for any particular candidate because the Police Service Commission would have had the constitutional duty to assess the performance of sitting commissioners of police, so there can be a natural bias for or even against the particular candidate? Now, those are the two issues with respect to the Police Service Commission and the removal of the requirement to retain a firm to conduct the assessment. The second issue that stems from this 2021 order for the selection of the Commissioner of Police is that there's an interference with the merit list. Previously, the procedure would have been, the 2015 procedure, is that after the firm conducts its assessment of the particular candidates for the position of Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police, Based on the ranking, an order of merit list would be compiled by the Police Service Commission, with the highest ranking candidate being placed on top of the list and then in a descending order. Now, the President, Her Excellency, would receive one name, which is the first name on the list, to be sent to the Parliament through a notification. Now, the procedure is that the entire merit list, not just one name, be sent to Her Excellency. Now, how will Her Excellency decide which name to be sent to the Parliament? According to the Constitution, Her Excellency will have to be advised by the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago to determine which candidate comes forward to the Parliament for debate. Now, this is in fact leading to a cabinet sitting and handpicking a commissioner of police. So we can see the inherent dangers with respect to this particular 2021 order that was laid in the Parliament. And we have raised these concerns. Recently, I saw reported in the media that a former commissioner of the Police Service Commission did in fact also express some concern with respect to this 2021 Police Commissioner order. And these are some of the things that we will raise in the public domain to ensure that there is no political interference, especially in law enforcement in Trinidad and Tobago. The third matter I wish to raise is a very important matter. The National Insurance Bank, the NIB, which falls under the portfolio of the Minister of Finance, would normally and by law have to send annual reports to the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance has failed to lay the annual reports of the NIB for the years 2019 and 2020. Now, the importance of these reports are that these reports will contain very important information, such as the number of contributors and beneficiaries in the National Insurance Scheme, the contribution of incomes collected by the bank, the financial status of the bank, the composition of investment portfolios, investments, financial and commercial arrangements with subsidiaries or associate companies. And then we hear Minister of Finance, Minister Embrace, announcing recently that there is some discussion ongoing in the cabinet and in the government that they are willing to now increase the retirement age from 60 to 65. And this was reported widely in the media, and those are statements made in the Parliament. Now, if the minister is in fact going to implement such a policy, it will wreak havoc on the lives of persons who are approaching 60 years of age, as they have planned their lives in anticipation of their pension. And to deprive such persons of their state pension at a time when medical bills and living expenses mount will be cruel and unjust. It will be a grave act of social injustice. So now you're telling persons that you can no longer retire at 60 but 65. But in this country, persons who are 20 years of age, 25 years of age, who hold master's degree, bachelor's of law degree, doctorates, PhDs, they cannot get a job, but now you're sending back persons who have planned their entire lives, make several contributions towards the NIB, back to work until age 65. And the Minister of Finance has a duty to account to the Parliament through the annual reports of the NIB, but the Minister of Finance has not laid these reports. So based on these issues, a claim, an application for judicial review was filed in the High Court of Justice by former Attorney General, Senior Counsel Anand Ramlugan, and I'm also part of that legal team. And that application was filed on the 18th of June 2021. And this morning, High Court Judge Justice Margaret Mohammed did in fact give permission and give the green light for a GR claim to be filed in the court, a judicial review claim to be filed in the court against the Minister of Finance for him to explain and to lay the NIB reports in the Parliament. So the Minister of Finance will now have, if he's not going to be answerable to the parliament, will now have to be answerable to the court as to the reason why he has delayed and dragged his feet on not laying these most important NIB reports. What does the Minister of Finance have to hide with respect to these reports? The Minister of Finance has a duty to account to the population. So, leave has been granted for this matter to be filed, a substantive claim to be filed in the court against the Minister of Finance, seeking several reliefs. And though you will hear more about those matters later on as the matter proceeds in terms of the pronouncements that will be made by the court. So those are the three issues that I wish to raise in the public domain regarding the governance of Trinidad and Tobago by this inept and very incompetent PNM government.
Thank you very much, MP Saddam Hussein. Now I would like to open the floor to the media if there are any questions. All right. Rishi Harinanan from U97.5.
Hi, good afternoon. I wanted to find out your thoughts, both MP Lee and Saddam Hussein, on the Petrotrin request for proposals, which will be open sometime this week, hopefully, and this Petrotrin matter with ANV. How do you see this working out if the refinery is going to be sold?
Hussein, did you hear the question?
No, I didn't hear the question, Dr. Mayo.
Okay. I'll just have to sort through the technical issue to see.
Could you pose the question to us?
Yes, Rishi, could you please restate the question so I can, in a shorter way, so I can repeat it, please?
I wanted to just get their thoughts. With the Petrotrin refinery still being up for sale and this ongoing ANV matter, how is this going to work out? Where do you think this is going to lead us?
With respect to company, you would not realize that government has refining company and Paria fueling company would have taken the port and the refinery respectively. What will happen is that because the debts will be left into the Petrotrin company, at the end of the day, it will be $1 billion if awarded against the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. So with the sale of the refinery, that money, I would suppose, when the refinery is sold, would have to be used to pay ANV drilling, because Petrotrin right now does not have the capacity to pay that kind of money.
Okay. May I will call on Kim Budram from the Trinidad Express.
Thank you. Maybe MP would take this question. So, oh my goodness, where that picture came from. MP, you were speaking on COVID, so I was wondering, because it was something that I had actually heard. Has the UNC been approached by families of people who have unfortunately passed in COVID? These are COVID-related deaths. Now the UNC has quite a bit of attorneys within the party, and so I was wondering if you all had been approached by any family or families who were looking to take the state to task through the court for information, whether it be investigations into their loved ones' deaths. They have issues with the handling of the treatment of their loved ones. People were not getting information, that sort of thing. No access to their relatives. They are not being told what sort of treatment is being used. So I was just wondering if there has been any approach to the party to assist families in that way.
Let me first put it out there that the Kim, before I get into your substantive question, any attorney that wants to challenge this government on any matter, whether it is COVID-19 and other matters, we always seem to be aligned to those attorneys, because any attorney that challenges this government in whatever they do, they call them UNC attorneys. And that is further from the truth. So that I don't think the entire law fraternity in Trinidad and Tobago belongs to it's part of the United National Congress Party. So I want to put it out there. There are some issues, and I know in the past that earlier in the past, I know Attorney Ramdeen had challenged earlier on when issues of burial came up as to loved ones who would have lost their families and won't be allowed to access the body. I know that has been out there in the domain. I read that out there. I have not been in contact with Attorney General Ramdeen on that issue. And Attorney Ramdeen might have been a United National Congress senator in the past, but that doesn't mean that he cannot like Saddam Hussein, who's an attorney, represent the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But we have not. I am not aware of any attorney presently that is doing that, and if they are, and that is why we are asking for answers via a commission of inquiry, because there are many individual families out there, many families who have lost their loved ones, that have not gotten closure and haven't gotten any information on really and truly, other than saying that your family died from the virus. You know, I keep repeating, there is no cure for the virus. So it is really about patient care that we are talking about. And I think if anyone wants to find out, it's about the patient care of their family members who might have died from the virus.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. I have a question from Joel Brown from CCN TV6, and I will read it out on his behalf. And this is directed to Lee primarily. And it is, now that the Gambling, Gaming and Betting Bill was passed by both houses of Parliament, and given the opposition's concern about the bill, will the opposition seek a judicial review or any other legal action with regard to the legislation?
Let me, and that's a good question, and let me put it squarely out there. Yesterday in my debate, if one look at my debate, I started off by saying the removal of the 3/5 clause and turning that bill that was presented yesterday in both houses. Yesterday it was presented in the lower house, removing the 3/5 clause and making that bill into a simple majority bill. It will be challenged by individuals or gaming establishment who feel that their rights, Constitution 4 and 5, are being affected, because there was nothing substantial in the bill that the government presented in 2016 that was not presented in the same bill yesterday. So the bill is not proportionate. I said that in my debate. The government is well aware, and I'll tell you why they are well aware that the bill is not proportionate. And in my presentation, I asked if this bill is about satisfying some international requirement, because this bill will not be operationalized for I would say, not under a year. And even the Minister of Finance in the Senate at committee stage, he had said this bill could not be operationalized until 6 to 7 months down the road. So if we are talking about taxation and getting taxes from the gaming institution, that is a fallacy. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen. So the question has to be asked, what was the rush in passing this gaming bill as a simple majority bill, knowing fully well it is not proportionate, and it affects the constitutional rights of individuals, because the same clauses that were there in 2016 that required a 3/5 are still there. The only thing that they did is remove the 3/5 clause, and they turned it into a simple clause, a simple majority bill. And if you listen to Minister Imbert at committee stage when he was talking to Senator Vera, because even Senator Vera said, not David Lee or not the opposition, this piece of legislation will be tested in the court. It is there in the committee stage of the Senate. So Senator Vera, in his wisdom, is well aware that this piece of this bill will be tested. And even the Minister of Finance, in his experience and wisdom, also said at that stage that he will try to relook and revisit the bill because he does not want the bill to fail. So he's well aware, Minister Imbert, in his experience as a legislature, that that bill cannot stand up to the proportionate reality. So he knows that I am sure he will come back to Parliament to fix that bill.
Now we'll invite Rishi Harinanan again. You can ask your question.
Yeah, MP Lee, the concern that was raised is that the opposition was not going to support the bill if it had a 3/5 majority. And the argument being put forward by the government was that it is a bill basically that what the UNC would have brought when it was in government. So if the 3/5 majority was there, is it something that you all would have supported, given that, as they said, it was something that you all would have put forward?
We brought a bill in 2015. It was passed in May in the lower house in 2015. The government at the time stayed away from Parliament when we debated that bill in the lower house in 2015 and in the PP government. It was debated in the Senate in June 2015. Faris Alwari, then who's the Attorney General now, at that stage of his debate in the Senate, had a number of issues with the clauses of that 2015 bill of the PP government. A number of issues he raised. He raised the issues he actually said, firstly, the bill requires a 3/5. Even the Minister of Finance in the 2016 bill, which said it requires a 3/5. He raised the Attorney General now, who was then opposition senator, raised several issues on several clauses of those bills, like the fit and proper test, the commissioners not having a fit and proper requirement. The Attorney General at the time, opposition senator, raised several issues on the clauses. When they brought that bill back, and today, those same clauses that the Attorney General had issue with, it remains the same as the PP government bill. Now, if you had an issue then, and you are the Attorney General, why didn't you fix the clauses? Because the bill is a very dynamic bill. When we presented it in 2015, it is dynamic, it's very fluid, legislation is very fluid, it is a work in progress, and we are not saying in 2015 the bill did not have flaws, and as we go along that has happened now. It went to a GSE, and we hired, in the GSE there was an international consultant that was hired. One of the biggest issues, even for the international consultant, was that the regulations that were settled, that to carry those regulations and have proper consultation with the stakeholders of the industry. And to date, that has not happened. And that's one of the issues when we sat on the GSE, MP Indar Singh, Senator Mark, and MP Ganga Singh at the time, those are the issues they raised. They raised the issues of going back because it's a very, according to the Minister of Finance, as $1 billion industry. I beg to disagree with him, but let's leave it at that, a $16 billion industry. So it requires proper consultation with the stakeholders because as to date, and I raised it in my debate yesterday, one of the biggest issues have been banking issues for that gaming industry. I asked the Minister of Finance yesterday, seeing that the bill will be passed and it's passed as a simple majority bill, is it that he is now telling the banks that the bill is passed and the individuals, whether it's an employee, whether it is an owner operator, they no longer have banking issues, and they can now go to the banks and open and either bank their funds or open proper banking accounts, etc. And employees apply, according to the Attorney General, apply for mortgage loans because the bill is now passed. And that is a question the media should be asking the government. The bill is passed, the whole banking issues of what they said is happening in the industry. Is it now that these individuals, employees, owners, operators, etc., can now go to the bank and have no problems with the banking industry in banking their money, applying for proper mortgage facilities, applying for credit cards, etc., etc.?
Okay, thank you. And another question? Okay. I'll invite Kim Rudram again.
Okay, thanks again. So I'll try, I don't want to keep you long, it can be brief, but I just want to ask the MPs to digress a little bit and just talk, if they can, about what's happening in their constituencies in terms of crime, unemployment, poverty, for lack of a better word, people really struggling. Social media is a place where you see a lot of reflection, not just from the people themselves who are struggling, sometimes they don't have access, but you see other people who are either helping them or observing. And, you know, I think there's been a really noticeable increase in the kinds of stories about, be it petty crimes, probably based on the fact that people, you know, don't have means, so they're stealing, people selling their personal belongings, their household items and so on to make ends meet. People have started to beg. Of course, we also have immigrants. In addition to that, any statement at all, this may be something separate that I may do out of this. Thank you.
Saddam. Well,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that question. As a member of Parliament for Barata San Juan, even before the pandemic, things were already bad in terms of unemployment and crime in my constituency. We have had the Barata police station shut down. Many persons have raised concerns regarding that. And they would have indicated to me, my constituents, that would have also led to some level of increase in the criminal activities in the area. The Commissioner of Police, in fact, I met with him and he disagreed that we were promised to have more patrols in the area. In some instances, we did in fact get the patrols, but there's still that level of insecurity in the area with respect to crime. So that has not subsided based on the pandemic. In fact, we have seen more and more persons become unemployed who would have been working in a lot of the food industries in my area. I have a lot of businesses in the area that have been closed down and their doors have been shut. That in itself led to a really, really devastating effect in the area. And every single day, Kim, of my office is received with many, many calls of persons just asking for basic food items. And that is something that is really, really worrying in this country. The level of unemployment that we have now, we see that the government has no proper, precise plan to reopen the economy. They don't even have a plan with respect to vaccines, which is required to reopen the economy. And persons in this area right now, they are really in need. We are trying our best. We're working with the businesses in the area, those that are open. We're working with some of the NGOs, the religious bodies in the area, to try to bring as much relief as we can to those persons who really need the assistance.
If I can just add to what Saddam, and I didn't get it. I think I got the gist of the question. Pointe-a-Pierre constituency, in my constituency, Pointe-a-Pierre, we are grateful for the hampers that we get from the government, from NAMDEFCO, but it's not sufficient because, you know, we got a veggie hamper, and you know that's a one-off kind of situation. Really and truly, what the constituent people are really crying out for those individuals who would have filed salary relief grants, who pay their NIS and were previously are employees, and they have been able to work, especially small and medium sectors, into the restaurant sector, so forth. To date, they have not gotten any sort of relief, whether it is a 1,000 grant for for May, sorry, or even a $1,500 for May, and they would have filed since the first week of May because they have been shut down since the ending of April. Today we are the 24th of June, and I don't think anyone in this country has gotten any relief, salary relief, via NIB or via the Ministry of Finance. Yesterday in Parliament, the Minister of Finance says it's a work in progress. So this is literally 6 weeks, and I had asked a question early on in May: when would individuals start to get salary relief, compensation? And he said between 2 to 3 weeks. We are now on the 24th of June, and I don't think anyone has gotten any kind of relief in Trinidad and Tobago. So that is one aspect, Kim. The other aspect, I have a good friend in the insurance industry, and what he is a senior person in a large conglomerate insurance, and what they are seeing is a lot of individuals are now calling in to make ends meet on their insurance policy, so that there's a cash surrender value in your insurance policy, and a lot of people, individuals, are now calling it in to be able to sustain some sort of livelihood who have not been working. And also a lot of individuals are not able to meet their monthly insurance payments, and they're seeing a lot of that. So that, yes, the people are suffering out there, and and we don't know when we will see an end to this, when the individuals will get some sort of relief. We looked at the construction sector that now they can apply, but when they will get some sort of relief is the issue for everyone. Until this government starts to roll out the relief to individuals or even small and medium businesses, it's just pie in the sky, and Rome is burning, the country is burning, and we are there, hoping that the proper things are done, and it's done at a fast pace to bring relief to the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago, because there are a lot of individuals who might be living in someone might say a proper home, but that doesn't mean that they are not suffering because they are not working and their savings are running out, and that has been happening since last year. Now this didn't happen in April or May. We have been going through this since last year. And the people tend to think that this is just a April or May, June 2021 phenomenon. No, we have been like this since March of 2020.
If I may
Are
just
there-
add to what
Yes.
if I may just add to what the leader said to I can tell you of one specific case in my area where the person is on the brink of being evicted. Yeah, wrote the ministry, in fact, to see if they can lend some assistance with respect to the rental assistance grant. And we were told that that grant has been discontinued. So I think the government really has to rethink some of the social programs and grants that they have, because persons right now are not being able to pay their rents. They come to the office. Second point is the utilities. Right here in Barata and Sawa, you would have seen last week that WASA wanted to engage in a disconnection drive. Persons have no money to buy food, pay rent, but you're going to now disconnect their water. So we're asking the government to really look into some of these things, to expand the utilities assistance program to really help these persons who really are in a dire state right now.
Okay, well, thank you very much, MPs Lee and Hussein. And I'd like to thank the media personnel for being here and asking your questions. Also, I would like to thank all our viewers on social media. Have a good afternoon and stay safe.
that you have people out of the country who cannot come home. They cannot come, they're stateless.
Finally, the Express is being fair and printing the truth.
We should be having trials, starting and finishing in 120 days.
What have you done to protect women and girls?
It must tell us that something is wrong.
This is Ali Baba and 40 thieves in charge of Trinidad and Tobago today.